This afternoon, we're having a hearing to review the President's fiscal year 2016 funding request and budget justification for the U.S. Nuclear Regulatory Commission. Senator Feinstein and I will each have an opening statement, and then each senator may have up to 5 minutes for an opening statement, alternating between the majority and minority. Some senators are fleeing before the snow comes, so I don't know how many will be here, but we're here. We'll then turn to the witnesses for their testimony. We're delighted to see you. We're glad to have so many of you here, and this is really an opportunity for us to have a good discussion about nuclear power and the Nuclear Regulatory Commission. I'd like to thank our witnesses and introduce them in this way. Mr. Stephen Burns is Chairman of the U.S. Nuclear Regulatory Commission. Mr. Chairman, welcome. Christine Svinicki, good to see you again. Thank you for being here. Mr. William Ostendorf, good to see you again, Commissioner. Thank you for coming. Commissioner, Mr. Jeff Barron, welcome to the hearing. Also a member of the Commission, the Nuclear Regulatory Commission. We're here today to review the 2016 budget request for the Nuclear Regulatory Commission, which is the independent agency responsible for regulating the safety of our nation's commercial nuclear power plants and other nuclear materials. It's the first time in a few years the subcommittee has had a hearing to examine the Commission's budget. It's also the first of several hearings that the subcommittee will hold this year on nuclear power. These hearings are important because nuclear power provides about 20% of our nation's electricity and more than 60% of our carbon-free electricity, and I'll have more to say about all that as we go along. I plan to focus my questions on 4 main areas: licensing nuclear waste repositories, which is a passion of Senator Feinstein as well as mine. Number 2, avoiding excessive regulation. Number 3, licensing for new and existing reactors. Number 4, making sure the agency is running effectively. You have that for higher education. Thanks. First on waste, we have to solve the 25-year stalemate about what to do with used fuels from our 99 nuclear reactors, as well as fuel from some that have already stopped operating. We have to have a place to put the used fuel in order to ensure that nuclear power has a strong future in this country. Later this year, I look forward to reintroducing with Senator Feinstein and Senator Murkowski and perhaps others legislation that would create temporary and permanent storage sites for nuclear waste. Also, Senator Feinstein and I plan to again include a pilot program for nuclear waste storage and in the Energy and Water Appropriations bill, as we have for the past 3 years. Her idea, I strongly support it. The new sites we'd seek to establish through the legislation that we're reintroducing would not take the place of Yucca Mountain. We have more than enough waste to fill Yucca Mountain to its legal capacity, but would rather complement it. The legislation is consistent with the President's Blue Ribbon Commission on America's Nuclear Future. But my own view is that Yucca Mountain can and should be part of the solution. Federal law designates Yucca Mountain as the nation's repository for used nuclear fuel. The Nuclear Waste Fund, which is money that utilities have paid the government to dispose of their used nuclear fuel, has a balance of about $36 billion, and there are still several steps to go in the licensing process for Yucca Mountain. The Nuclear Regulatory Commission has a balance of unspent funding that should be used to continue the licensing process. More resources will be required, so I think it's fair to ask why are those funds not requested in your budget? The Nuclear Regulatory Commission recently completed the safety evaluation report that said Yucca Mountain met all of the safety requirements through the, quote, period of geologic stability. The Commission and the Environmental Protection Agency defined the period of geologic stability as 1 million years. To continue to oppose Yucca Mountain because of radiation concerns is to ignore science as well as the law. The next step on Yucca Mountain include completing a supplemental environmental impact statement and restarting the hearings before the Atomic Safety and Licensing Board, which were suspended in September 2011. Money is available for these activities, and I would like to hear about your plans to use it. Second area of questioning, avoiding excessive regulation. A couple of years ago, Senator Mikulski and I and Senator Burr and Senator Bennett asked a group of distinguished higher education officials to look at the federal rules and regulations governing higher education. They made their report a couple of weeks ago, and it was a startling report. And there's some, I'd like for Senator Feinstein to hear this part, because California has a terrific system of universities. The commission that Senator Mikulski and I and Bennett and Burr commissioned on regulation of higher education reported about what they called a jungle of red tape that's interfering with their ability to govern properly. Vanderbilt University hired the Boston Consulting Group to assess how much it cost Vanderbilt itself to comply with all the federal rules and regulations on higher education in 2014, and the answer was $150 million, which is 11% of the university's operating revenue or expenditures, and adds $11,000 to each student's tuition. Now, you may wonder, what does that have to do with nuclear power? It's the same kind of thing all throughout the government. None of these rules and regulations, or almost none, are put in by evil people, or they're not well-intentioned. They just add up over time. And to the extent excessive regulation makes it more difficult for nuclear power plants to be extended, to be operated economically, that's something I'd like to discuss. I wonder whether, for example, we know the answer to the question, how much does it cost a utility? How much does regulation cost a utility for its operation? Then there's the question of licensing of new and existing reactors. I proposed one time that we should build 100 new reactors. People thought that was kind of over the top, but when you stop and think about it, we have the Center for Strategic and International Studies saying that by 2020, not long away, that as many as 25 of our 99 reactors may not be operating. We have the various factors that are making it less economic to operate nuclear reactors, such as the low price of natural gas, the subsidies for wind power, which permit wind producers in unregulated markets to basically pay the merchant utility to take the wind power, and then the producer can still make a profit. That means the nuclear power is less economic. Excessive regulation may be a factor. Carbon rules from the EPA that treat nuclear differently than other renewable sources may be a factor. And then if we think about the fact that if we just look at the if about 20% of our current capacity from coal goes offline by 2020, as projected by the Energy Information Administration, were entirely replaced by nuclear power, it would require building another 48 new large reactors. So add to that the third point, which are the number of aging reactors, those that are getting too old and which may not have their licenses extended. We might need 100 new reactors just to replace the ones we already have. And I want to make sure that we don't end up surprised by that. Then we want to make sure the agency is run effectively. Congress appropriated in the year 2000 about $470 million for the agency. The budget this year is $1 billion. Much of the increase was due to the significant number of new reactor licenses that were anticipated. However, most were never actually submitted, so it's fair to ask whether this additional funding is being used for unnecessary regulation. Finally, let me just make this observation, and I'll ask Senator Feinstein then to take whatever time she would like. I don't want the United States of America to 10, 20, 30 years from now to suddenly wake up and discover that we're a country without nuclear power. And I think it's possible that could happen. If CISIS says we may lose 25 reactors within the next 5 or 6 years, if big utility operators tell me they're not even thinking about asking for extensions of the time their reactors might stay online, say from 60 to 80 years, because it's not economic to operate them, if we suddenly find ourselves without most of the 99 reactors we have, we know what will happen. We've seen what happened in Japan. We've seen what happened in Germany. And at a time when the President and many in America feel that climate change is an urgent challenge for the world and our country, the idea of deliberately allowing the 99 reactors which produce 60% of our carbon-free emissions to allow that number to decline, I think, would be serious malpractice by all of us involved, whether it's the Congress, whether it's the Commission, whether it's the Department of Energy. So it's with that spirit that I'm going to be approaching this hearing and other hearings this year. I know that the Regulatory Commission is not the Department of Energy. Its job is safety, and it has a terrific record in that. I don't think I'm sure it's true, no other form of energy production in our country has a record of safety that exceeds nuclear power. But I'm going to be asking questions about what can you also do to create an environment so that over the next 30 or 40 years at least, while we're doing research to find other sorts of clean energy, that we don't find ourselves without large amounts of renewable emissions-free electricity, which is what Japan suddenly found and which Germany has found, and it doesn't work in a big manufacturing country given the current mix of power generation. So I welcome the Commissioners. I thank you for your service, and I look forward to Senator Feinstein's comments.